Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's January 7, 2023, and this is episode 801. I mentioned in the previous episode that I was in the middle of recovering my data after a problem developed with my 6-month-old Drobo 5D3, which is supposed to be fault tolerant. Still, ironically, I've only been able to get through a few fatal issues with my Drobos over the years because I have always kept 2 of them so that I can maintain a backup of the data on the main Drobo to the second. Well, having lost a number of days at the end of last year messing around trying to solve a problem that had rendered my Drobo read-only, and having noticed a statement on the Drobo website that there would be no further updates for the Mac OS, I figured it was time to move on, and that is exactly what I've done. Unfortunately, despite pausing my Backblaze cloud backup before resetting my Drobo and wiping all of its data, it would seem that Backblaze automatically unpauses itself after a period of time. When I came back to my computer the morning after resetting the Drobo, Backblaze was running again and had deleted almost all of my 20 terabytes of data from my backup. So I started to work an alternative off-site backup strategy into my plans as well. I had hoped to be able to report more fully on my new setup, having spent the last week working on this change, but a few things have held me back, and I'm running out of time as I leave for my Hokkaido landscape photography tour tomorrow. So I will share what I have bought and why today and update you on the entire strategy later. First, I'd like to share my thinking behind buying a Synology DS923 Plus NAS drive as the cornerstone of my new data management strategy. For many years, I've ruled out NAS, or network attached storage, thinking it would be too slow to make much sense, and in some ways this is still correct. But I looked into what it would take to speed things up a little, and found that by picking up a new 10 gigabits per second network switching hub, anything connected to that hub that supports 10 Gbps would be able to communicate at pretty respectable speeds. Theoretically, the Wi-Fi on my MacBook Pro should also be capable of almost as fast communication, but the network interface into my Wi-Fi router slows down the data flow, so Wi-Fi is crippled to a degree. It's fast enough to reference old photos, but not fast enough to work on my main image catalog over the network, because opening the catalog itself takes too long. Besides, I have a system in place to work on my main working catalogs on a super fast SSD, which can be moved between my computers, so there's no point in changing that. There are a number of companies creating what seem to be very capable NAS systems. I'm not going to talk about the ones I decided against, but when I looked at what Synology had built into their NAS drives, it became pretty obvious that they were providing far more than I had thought possible from what I had mistakenly still believed to be not much more than a hard drive with a network card attached and a simple user interface to do some basic configuration. That may have been true a decade or two ago, but things have changed. Here is the first image for today, and this is a screenshot of the desktop of the Synology DS923 Plus NAS unit. And as you can see, it's a computer, or rather a full-blown network server, with a built-in operating system and a control panel like you find on Windows or a Linux computer. If you don't see the images as we talk about these on your device, then you can go to mbp.ac/801 to follow along. There's also a packet center in this OS where you can download and install various software to tailor the system to your needs. I'm not going to cover everything that I've done, as a lot of the initial setup is achieved by following a tutorial that is displayed when you finish installing the system on first launch. Still, I will discuss some of the aspects that I feel are important and relevant to a photographer, which is the profile of most of you, the audience. Although smaller NAS units from Synology are a little easier on the pocket, if, like me, you want something that will give you a decent amount of storage, these things will cost you a pretty penny. I've priced things up using Amazon.com, and I will include affiliate links in the post, so if you buy with my links, we receive a small payment, so you would be helping to keep the wheels on the MVP wagon by clicking through. I bought the Synology DS923 Plus NAS, which is currently listed at $667 on Amazon.com. Here is a photo of the unit, unboxed, and as you can see, it has 4 drive bays and comes with 2 Ethernet cables. By default, it has 2 Ethernet ports on the back, and they work together to provide faster transfer speeds than a single 1 Gbps port. But to get the highest data transfer speeds, I added the optional 10 gigabits per second RJ45 Ethernet port. This theoretically allows up to 10 times faster data transfer than a single 1 gigabits per second interface, but I am currently seeing just over 3 times faster. I believe this may be close to what I can expect, but I'm still trying some configurations. You will, of course, need to check that your computer has a 10 gigabits per second Ethernet port, as my iMac Pro does, and then finally you'll need a switching hub that runs at these speeds. These run at, ironically, around 10 times more in price as well as speed. I got a TP-Link 5-port 10G multi-gigabit switch, but I can't find the same model on Amazon.com, so I can't provide a link. It comes with 2 lights on each port. One orange light illuminates when the port is running at 1 gigabits per second, and a green light which illuminates when the port is running at 10 gigabits per second. As you can see in this next photo, only my 10 Gbps port on the DS923 Plus NAS and my iMac Pro support this speed. You may also wonder what that ugly contraption is on top of this switch. Well, I read that the switch runs very hot and fails after a number of months because of the heat. I ran it without the heatsink for the first few days, and it didn't get excessively hot, but in the summer I can imagine it would have a much harder time staying cool. So I bought a roll of heat-conducting double-sided silicone tape and covered the top surface with it, and then stuck 4 heat sinks onto the tape. And it seems to be working pretty well to keep the unit cool. I hope this remains the case as the summer sets in. To create your storage, you will need to add some hard drives. I selected the Seagate Iron Wolf 16TB hard drives, but beware that at the time of writing, Synology is only officially supporting up to 12TB Iron Wolf drives. You will see a message warning of the lack of support when you insert the drives into your system, but they run perfectly well, and I expect that they will be fully supported before too long. If this worries you though, check the Synology compatibility list and ensure that you buy something that is on the list. The 16 terabyte drives are currently listed at $280, and you will need at least 2 of these to get any fault tolerance in your system. I bought 3 and will wait to get the 4th drive for a while, as 3 drives with fault tolerance gives me 28 terabytes of storage. I will add a 4th disk within a few months, but I wanted to reduce the initial expenditure, and 28 terabytes will be enough for a while. The unit comes with some screws that you will need if you mount 2.5-inch drives, but if you use 3.5-inch drives, you can use the drive bays and the plastic strips that hold the drive securely into place with plastic dowels through vibration and sound dampening rubber grommets. Once you have a drive in the holder, it slides into the bay until you hear a click, and then the door lays flush against the front of the unit in line with the other closed doors. There are keys to lock the bay doors to prevent prying hands from pulling them open while the drive is running. With the drives and faster Ethernet port installed, I did some speed tests, and all of the test applications I ran gave a speed of around 400 megabytes per second, which is around a third of the theoretical cap. I read that I can get closer to 1000 megabytes per second from the NAS, so there may be something that I can still tweak to coax more speed out of it. I'll keep you posted if I find the cause. I did find, for example, that if you have an external hard drive attached to the DS923 Plus NAS, the transfer speed drops considerably, even when you're not accessing the external drive, which is strange. Having found that I wasn't getting full speeds out of the unit, I added 2 800 gigabyte M2 NVMe SSD cards and configured them as a cache pool to increase the speed of the volume I created with the hard drives. But unfortunately, it didn't do much for the speed in terms of speed tests. I read that speed tests don't always show much improvement, but as the NAS discovers which files you use more often and moves them to the cache, the unit will gradually provide faster speeds through the SSD cache. I also tried using the new feature which enables you to create a separate SSD volume on the DS923 Plus, and I measured the speed of that, and I got just over 400 megabytes per second again, which indicates to me that there is a bottleneck somewhere else. I need to investigate if the switching hub I bought can really operate at 10 Gbps, as that seems suspect at this point. One consolation, though, is that I'm still seeing speeds over the network that are 1.5 times faster than my Drobo 5D3 over Thunderbolt 3. So it's nice to realize that speed improvement. Once the hardware was set up, I actually spent another 2 days trying to configure my network to be able to access data over the internet. This carries some risk, of course, so if you also try this, ensure that you keep tabs on the security aspects, including, obviously, difficult to guess passwords and two-factor authentication. To cut a very long story short, though, I found that I was unsuccessful because my wireless 5G router has pretty much all of the non-standard ports closed, so they cannot be opened by the Synology software. I ended up calling my old wired internet company and had them restart my connection after checking with their support team that custom ports could be opened. And within minutes of the old internet coming back online, I was able to configure all of the custom ports automatically to achieve what I'd been failing to do for the last 2 days. I've set up many of the Synology tools, such as Synology Drive and their photos, video and audio extensions, as well as Notes, which I've been playing with, and have decided that these tools are good enough for me to cancel my Dropbox account. I'm probably going to stop a few other cloud services and subscriptions, hopefully including my additional storage payment to Apple, once I've figured out how to get my images automatically into the NAS after shooting something new on my phone. I have already gotten my images syncing to my devices from the NAS, but it's just a new image transfer that I have to put into place now. I have also installed the Synology Active Backup tool and now getting my MacBook Pro backed up to my NAS overnight. And I have set up some sync jobs to keep my photography archives in sync, but I still need to get my final strategy decided before I can report on this. The NAS is faster than my Drobo, so it makes sense to work on images in my archives directly from the NAS instead of the Drobo when I'm in my studio. As I mentioned earlier, over Wi-Fi this doesn't really work because the catalog files take too long to open, but as I have a large enough drive on my MacBook Pro, I can move the catalogs to the internal SSD and set up a synchronization task to ensure that any changes I make locally are synced back to the NAS so that they're in place the next time I use the catalogs from my iMac Pro. So, as you can see, there's a lot to work on, and to be honest, mainly due to the problems I had setting up external access, it's taken a lot longer than I'd hoped, but I'm very happy with how this is shaping up. My Drobos are going to become backup drives, and as they ultimately fail and become unsupported, I'll fade them out. I can continue to change hard drives in my new Synology NAS to get more volume as the years go by, and I will probably add a second NAS as the local backup once my Drobos are dead. The only area that I still do not have covered is my off-site backup to replace Backblaze. I have contacted a company called iDrive, and I tried to get them to create a 30 terabyte personal plan because currently their largest official plan is only 20 terabytes, but they have refused. They offered me an unofficial 40 terabyte plan, but that is more than I need, and their other recommendation was to sign up for a 30 terabyte team plan, which is double the cost of a personal plan. I do not need all of the extra features that come with the team plan, like multiple accounts, so I'm not so happy that this is their only option. The thing I do like about iDrive, though, is that they will send me enough hard drives to put my entire archive on, and after I send the drives back to them, they will copy the data into my account, so I don't have to spend years uploading it all again. I haven't yet ruled out iDrive, but the other option I'm looking into is keeping a backup on my 2 Drobos and literally shipping one of them at a time to a secure warehouse in a neighboring prefecture. This is an option, but ideally I wanted to keep my offsite backup further away in case we have a major disaster in and around Tokyo. This would cost me around $50 each time I swap the backup drives out, and if I was to swap them out once a month for a year, which I really should, it would cost me around $600, which is just under what iDrive want for their team plan at 30 terabytes. So iDrive may well be the best option considering the backup would be overseas and therefore theoretically safer from my perspective. Anyway, I'm out of time, so we'll wrap it up there. I'll create a post and podcast about my new backup strategy in a few weeks' time as I finalize all of the new parts. But for now, it's looking good, and I'm off to Hokkaido with a group of talented landscape photographers tomorrow, and it's gonna be great to get back on the road and meet some old friends and create some new ones over the next 2 weeks. I will catch up with a few episodes to share details when I get back, so I'll see you on the flip side. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting us on Patreon, which comes with various tiers of benefits depending on your contribution. You can find details at mbp.ac/Patreon. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back in a few weeks' time with those Hokkaido updates. In the meantime though, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye bye.